So first, what I wanted to do is to just, pass the microphone down real quick in 30 to 60 seconds. Tell me a bit about yourself and your company, and then let's riff on the idea of what is the role of ABM in your company.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for having us here, Mark. Great to be here. Thanks everybody for braving the traffic in San Francisco with the Giants game and everything. My name is Nick Ezzo. We're not actually in order here, so don't pay any attention to this slide right here. We probably should have sat in order or whatever. But that's all right. I work for Host Analytics. We make finance applications in the cloud. So just like Salesforce has taken sales to the cloud and Marketo took marketing to the cloud, Host Analytics and others are taking finance to the cloud. So that's what we do. We're a SaaS application. So real quick, what do we do with ABM? We have kind of a two-pronged strategy. At the very high end, the largest customers, we have adopted an ABM strategy where we have isolated the top accounts that we care about. More to come on that later on about what we selected, what we did. And then at the lower end, we have smaller accounts, and we have kind of preserved a net fishing type of strategy with our smaller SMB and mid-market type accounts. So that's what we do.
Thank you, Nick. I am Srihari, the last name out here, with ZenIQ. First of all, thank you to Salesforce and Costanoa for co-hosting. So we just had to show up, right? And that's awesome, right? So on how what do we do in ABM? So one of the good fortunes we have is we can use our own system. You see, as a small company, as Anthony was talking earlier, it's much less expensive to do ABM, right? So we use our own product. So we have different lists. So for example, we target anyone who has marketing automation, and that segments itself into those that use Marketo, Eloqua, based on their size, or HubSpot, or Pardot, Salesforce, right? So that's one set of lists. The other set of lists is all the agencies, right, who are going to be channel partners, because the messaging is going to be different for each one of them. We are also planning to because we are a startup, we're going to be raising funding, Series A, Series B, etc. We're planning to use ABM for our fundraising. Let's see how that goes.
VCs here tonight.
Right. So let's see how that goes, right? And I'll share the results of the experiment. But we have so many different lists, and then we are looking at what's an MQA, marketing qualified account, for each one of those lists, and what's our coverage on each of those accounts. What is the reach? What's the engagement? So that's how we're doing ABM.
Hey everybody, I'm Natalie. I'm actually sitting in the right seat. But I'm with Salesforce. I run demand gen for our enterprise accounts, and one of the primary projects this year is going to be all about ABM. So in the past we have been doing it, but we've been doing it in different disciplines. So we have the exec programs running events, we have campaigns, we're always doing targeted campaigns, and then you have the product marketing team that has been creating customized content for some of our top accounts. So my role this year is going to be to further align all these disciplines along with partner marketing, and we're going to be taking our top 30 to 50 accounts within the enterprise space and going to market with a more integrated approach. So we can talk a little bit more about that.
I'm good. I'm good. Hi, I'm Joelle Kaufman. I'm not in order, but we should be easy to figure out, right? So I am the head of marketing for Bloomreach. Bloomreach is a big data company that focuses on getting products and content found on the site, off the site, and showing our customers exactly what they're doing that's frustrating the crap out of their visitors, what they're doing that's making it harder for people to get what they want. So that's Bloomreach. In terms of ABM, we've been doing ABM before ABM was named. We are 100% ABM oriented. We work specific targets. Our ABM is both two parts of the funnel. We use it very much to identify and customize content, but we also use it to arm our SDRs. And we believe very much that true personalization, which is something our company does, true personalization to an account cannot be done in an automated way. The automation must support the ability of intelligent people to personalize and engage with people. So we use ABM to score opportunities, to decide where we're going to prioritize our time and our resources, to measure the performance of every single thing we do in sales and marketing. So that's how we do ABM.
Hey everyone, I'm Peter Isaacson. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Demandbase. We are actually an ABM platform that covers advertising, website personalization, website analytics, all the way through sales conversion. And here's where it gets kind of meta, because we are building a category, and that category is account-based marketing. So we are focused on building the account-based marketing category. That's something that we invest time in every day. And we're focused on ABM on a couple of different levels. One is certainly we're selling ABM solutions into our prospects and customers, but we're also ABM practitioners. So we have something that we call the DB3K, which is our 3,000 target accounts that we focus on. It's responsible for 80% of our pipeline. Everything that we do in marketing is really focused around those priority accounts, that DB3K. So lots of experience on both the solution side, but also the practitioner side.
My name is Rob Israq, CMO for Tipalti. Tipalti is essentially a new category of sorts, but it's basically supplier payments automation. So if you think of accounts payable and staff that has to be used to pay people around the world, our system essentially automates that whole entire process by about 80%. So that's what the company does. How we got into ABM, our market's kind of like Host Analytics, I think, mentioned, in that there's some people we're finding based on demand, paid keyword, SEO, various different forms of kind of net fishing. And then we also know categories or industries or spaces that we're extremely effective in, things that are very niche, like ad tech or e-commerce or share economy. Categories that are sometimes new, or where you just can't buy a list that says, I want to buy a share economy list. You can't build a database. You can't run campaigns that way. And so we actually have used ABM to crack into that space effectively.
Hey, thank you very much. First question I have here is, what are some of the indicators that ABM is more relevant or impactful to marketers? So this is like maybe advice for people looking at their program or looking to plan a program. What characteristics or used indicators might cue them into a direction? And we could go random order at this point. Anybody have a... But what indicators should they see? So if they're evaluating the market that they're facing, and they say, well, you want a big audience that you're after, or a small one, you want high ASP, you want...
So I think most companies have a blend, and that's okay. But the ABM part, I think, requires that you actually know who you're targeting. You know who the accounts are. You probably know who the roles are that are part of the buying team within those accounts. Because the reason you have to move to ABM is there isn't a single buyer. Just because somebody engaged is utterly irrelevant. They can't make the decision. That could be because of your price point. It could be because of the nature of the product you're selling. But if you have a complex sales cycle that has multiple parties involved and you know who you're selling to, both account and roles within the account, ABM can be a very effective strategy for that segment of your market.
Now, Joelle, if you can continue a little bit more, because I know at Bloomreach, you guys have a very well-defined target audience, and the mix of ABM relative to other spend is very skewed. Could you expand on that?
So, there was some talk in your study, and I know you do this, Peter, in your business, but we, for example, we don't do much display advertising. Truly, the only display advertising is to try to re-engage someone that we've identified through ABM is a contact who's getting engaged with us, and we want to stay front of mind, right? It's not how we fish. We don't net fish, we human fish. In that we have SDRs, and our SDRs have very tightly defined account lists and people that they know they when you have only, say, 100 accounts that you can hit, you can't annoy them. You have to actually deliver insight and value and be very creative, or they just ignore you. And then you can't make your number, and all kinds of bad things happen. So in our case, our spend, if you were to look at my budget, our spend is very heavily towards how do we provide technology to the right people so that those people have the information to make good decisions? How do we use technology to provide the right insights so that our product marketers and our content teams create the materials that could be used by those people? And then obviously, as the sales cycle advances, how do we then customize to the specific needs of that account, not just based on what we can learn about them, but they've been communicating with us by the way they're engaging with us, all of which is provided to us analytically through the systems we use, so that our SDRs appear preternaturally smart. And maybe they're just brilliant, and they are wonderful. But please don't recruit them. But they are also at their fingertips having the data, the insights, information about the history, not just for that individual, but that individual in the context of that account. And then they have a library of content that they can draw on, whether those are email blurbs, whether those are news articles, whether those are our own blog, whether those are ebooks or infographics or videos. And one of the things we like to say is marketing is a media department. We have to be thinking about providing useful content, useful media to our prospects, because it's going to take them a long time to come to the decision that they want to actually work with us. And because we're SaaS, as I think is everybody up here SaaS? My new thing on SaaS is someone's always selling. You're never totally secure. You always have to be proving and showing, delivering value in your product and in your relationship. So we use that's, I hope, not a long-winded answer.
No, I'm going to move to Natalie, because I like the conversation with a very focused group of accounts. And you were mentioning before that you're focusing on a very limited number of accounts. And if you could speak to maybe how you selected those into your ABM program, and how you go ahead.
Yeah, so a lot of this is actually being driven by sales, because every sales rep wants to have an account-based marketing program just for their large enterprise account. But what we're actually doing is we're working with sales strategy, and we identified we don't want the ones that are already the highest AOV. We're looking at the ones that have the most potential. So we're looking at a lot of predictive variables in terms of where's the propensity to buy which clouds, do we have a champion within that account, and do we anticipate the TAM for that account to be really large in the next year. So that's how we basically are identifying the accounts that we're going after. Obviously, a lot of input from sales, the qualitative side, but also the data science to prove that that's where they need to be.
Now, what about the messaging that you're sending through to them? Are there certain forms of content? Are there certain channels that you communicate through? What does your mix kind of look like?
In terms of how we're reaching these accounts.
Yeah.
So through the three pillars that I mentioned, so we'll have the executive programs. So that can be anything from the executive dinners, the hospitality events. We're actually looking to get more engaged with the actual account. So if they're running a philanthropic event, we want to be sponsoring that and active and participant of that. But we're also doing a lot with digital. So that can be everything. We need to make sure that the AEs actually have the right data. So that's a challenge always. So we're using actually intent data to make sure that we have the right contacts within the account. And then we move into the IP targeting. We've explored other ideas. We've done Captivate marketing in the past. All of this gets really expensive, as you can imagine. So that's something that we're working through from a resourcing standpoint. And also is a headcount thing as well. So getting to the customized content that's coming out of product marketing.
What's interesting is you're really blending the offline and the digital world in your mix to the ABM target. And in my mind, that's really kind of a really interesting attribute of what ABM brings to the mix, is to be able to really narrow cast and understand precisely who you're talking to, so much so that you can afford to spend at a higher level, so the dinners and, direct mail becomes a component. But I think Peter probably is armed and ready over there.
Well, just on that point, I think it's really interesting because one of the things that we do at Demand Base and that we talk to our customers about is put an account-based lens on everything you do. So we sell digital solutions, obviously, but we put an account-based lens on literally all of our marketing programs. So we're certainly doing account-based advertising and website personalization and a lot of the digital programs, but every event that we go to, we know exactly how many folks from our DB3K accounts are actually participating there. We don't do a field activity without focusing initially and almost exclusively on our DB3K accounts to get them there. So everything that we do is a combination of digital but also analog programs coming into the mix. And in our experience, that's kind of a mix that's required to really have a high-performing account-based marketing strategy. It's not just about pressing a button and scaling or automating a program digitally. It's about kind of bringing a much more holistic program focus to your account-based marketing strategy.
So I'd like to just build a little bit. We go, our metric is to use what's called interesting and targeted. So targeted is the account. Interesting is it's the right person, or it's one of the right people. And so when we do our executive events, because I couldn't agree more, this is not a digital strategy. This is a go-to-market strategy. So, and again, if you've been doing high-end enterprise B2B, you've been doing it, you just haven't had the great tools to do it. But interesting and targeted, it's how we measure if someone wants to sell us a program. We analyze how many of their, the people they plan to reach are interesting and targeted. And if it doesn't hit a threshold, you're not getting our money. When we review everything, whether it's a dinner, a direct mail, a webinar, a ebook, it's all about interesting and targeted. So it requires that intersection, because we can get a lot of people from the accounts, because like yours, these are big accounts. There's a lot of people that works there. Who cares? They got to be the right people in the right accounts. That's where the money is.
So this may be a little controversial, but I'm thinking, I'm the only non-CMO here, so the question is, shouldn't every B2B marketer be doing ABM from, if you talk about the account lens, right? Even your traditional demand gen, lead gen, you should put an account lens to it. And, you know,
So
what do you think?
I'll answer very briefly on that. What I talk to customers, prospects about, if you're selling a $100 widget, then account-based marketing is probably not for you because the economics just aren't going to work. But if your average sales price is up around $5,000, $10,000, that's probably the kind of low end of the threshold. Once you get into $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, then the economics actually start making a lot of sense. And I would argue that account-based marketing at that threshold really is something that every company, every B2B company should be practicing. But again, there is a bottom end of that in terms of what actually makes sense economically.
Yeah, I'd add to that, you know, when you look at marketing and what programs and investments tend to work, it usually comes in a matrix of two, intent and then targeting. And so if you can find people with deep intent, sometimes that ROI is going to outperform, there are these 100 people on a list. But on the other hand, if you can't find those people with that deep intent, let's say you can't, someone talked earlier about there's not enough Google demand out there. You can't find people with mid-funnel type demand out there. The next best alternative when you start looking is how can you target people so precisely that you can then move them down the funnel. If you could target them super precisely by company and then by the person at the company, that's probably going to outperform other types of targeting techniques.
Yeah, I totally agree with your point on that one. When we look at it, we tend to think of the account in the middle of this big circle. And I don't know if anybody out there remembers like Schoolhouse Rock. Peter knows this example. I give a presentation sometimes about like
Awesome, by the way.
how a bill becomes a law. I don't know if you guys remember. Yeah, I don't know if you remember. I'm just a bill sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, I talk about that. You know how a lead becomes an opportunity. And when you think about that little bill in the middle, that little lead or account in the middle, how does he become a closed in one deal? I think about all the things around that circle, and sometimes it's digital. You know, it's email nurture tracks, it's account-based advertising with demand base, it's other types of digital things. Sometimes it's actually sending them a physical gift in the mail, like we do a lot of swag. In fact, we've got a great vendor with PFL, we do Swag IQ, and we're sending them a mug or a battery charger or a mouse pad or something to just get them to pick up the phone. Sometimes it's sending them a flat mailer SDRs are a huge component. So when you think about ABM, don't just like put all your eggs in the digital basket. Think about holistically, what are all the different touch points around this little bill in the middle that you want to hit that person with? And it's just really a matter of your own creativity.
Again, I can't emphasize enough. If you're at the price points that Peter was talking about, it's not a person. It's a team. And so your circle is actually, I got a lead. Who's around my lead?
Right.
And then how am I delivering each one of them something they need in order to make my opportunity into a customer?
I was going to mention it right in this conversation here. Gallup, they did some survey work. It was about a year and a half ago. They identified segments of how large businesses were and how many influencers were involved in the decision process. Enterprises with more than 1,000 employees had on average 34 influencers in a purchase. Now, I mean, even if you go and do an expansion, I mean, it's like, from a sales perspective, physically to pick up the phone call. Oh, it's crazy hard, you know, but to see that the older models where it was, you know, you find a problem, you call in the top 12 vendors, do a demo, you pick one, you know, like that's just gone. You know, there is no like economic buyer per se in the same sense that we would like to think of it. But yeah, 34 influencers, that's just like incredibly difficult, and it lines up directly with your conversation.
That actually brings to mind measurement for me,
Yeah.
just because in terms of how we're actually measuring the success of this activity, the key measurement we're using is actually engagement. So we're looking at you know, the C-suite and of the departments that we're trying to influence, will we be able to mark that box at the end of the year in terms of making them a champion for us.
So you're going relatively early stage, you know, like you're trying to measure indicators early on. How long would the sales cycle be then for that type of a measurement to?
It's probably going to be a year or more,
Okay.
I would think.
Yeah.
So do you measure the engagement of every single person in that account and like measure to make sure we're hitting the right people and we got everyone covered? And
It's going to vary account by account, I think, in terms of what that AE is really trying to penetrate. But yeah, usually there is an existing cloud, you know, that's why they have some AOV. And we do have that champion, but we're looking to, you know, these are really large accounts. So trying to replicate what that use case is in that place across the entire company.
Since you have the microphone in your hand, I was going to kind of head towards you again. Recently, I was checking out a bunch of research on the topic of cross-channel influence of marketing. And I found some really fascinating stuff around display ads and its interaction then with paid search. And to me, it started ringing back the concept of ABM. Now, a lot of them do a digital component to it, right? So, Peter, you guys deliver quite a few ads. What they measured was the concept of it improved the efficiency of paid search. It was something like in the order of like 30% on clicks and conversions. And what that brings to me then is kind of, in an integrated world, how do you manage that type of, you know, I'm sending messages out in one area, and you mentioned measurement a second ago, but it's coming in over here, and how do I bring that back around? How do I have that make sense?
Well, I think if you're measuring the overall, again, the second part of the scorecard is going to be the overall ACV in that account. So if we're targeting them with air cover through our advertising, and you have a
Bottom line,
baseline of where we were and where we're going to be, either on a quarterly basis or by the end of the year, I'm going to probably take the credit for that
Yeah.
because we're in marketing.
Yeah, I think there's also some tools. I mean, I don't know ZenIQ, but we use Engagio, which I suspect is competitive from looking at it, but where they're aggregating. Like, you can see all the various touch points, and they're creating scores so that you can start to measure across. I think the harder problem, which I think I'd love to hear your point of view on, is how do you actually get the people to coordinate and so that the actual content and campaigns are consistent?
Yeah. Does someone else want to answer? I think that's part of the new role that I'm taking on, just because we did have a lot of different facets of marketing kind of doing different things and trying to get the key lead. And also we're going to have a lot of mini quarterbacks that are kind of overseeing 5 accounts, just to make sure that we are integrating everything across those accounts.
Are you going to go to quarterbacks in marketing?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So one of the things I think that's kind of interesting that's developed is marketers can measure everything now, but we tend to continue to focus too much on the campaign metrics and report, a lot of people call them vanity metrics, things like that, click-through rates and MQLs and website traffic and things like that. And if you've ever presented to a CFO or a CEO or a CRO those metrics and seen their eyes glaze over, it's because you're reporting on something that's like 27 steps away from revenue. I think what's interesting about an account-based approach is that you're able to actually very tightly link your programs and what's going on at the account level all the way through from advertising to your website to your marketing automation solution into your CRM system and your pipeline and your closed revenue. And I really encourage marketers to focus on business impact, certainly measure the campaign metrics because that can be the canary in the coal mine, tell you if something's working or not working. But focus on things like close rate and funnel velocity and average contract value, things like that, and compare them to your non-target accounts. And if you're not moving things more quickly through the funnel, or if you are not improving your close rate, or you're not driving larger deal sizes, you've got a problem with your marketing, and you've got to really question whether you've selected the right accounts or you're delivering the right programs against it.
Let's talk about that for one quick second, because I think it's something we've kind of glossed over a little bit, which is the account selection. And I know when Anthony was up here earlier, he said, well, we use paper and pencil. We just hand curate these accounts. And although that probably will work for Gainsight, because you guys know your audience, I think that's like letting salespeople choose accounts that they want to go after is a fundamental mistake. Because honestly, and maybe this is blasphemy, but I'm a marketing person, and I'm full of blasphemy. Salespeople, left to their own devices, will choose the people they've sold to in the past, the people who pick up the phone when they call. Their kid goes to school with another kid, and their dad is the decision maker at some company or whatever. And I think you really have to blend that with a data-driven approach. And what we do is we actually do take a very data-driven approach. We use an application called Spiderbook, and I know that somebody from Spiderbook is here tonight. And we basically take all the accounts that the salespeople want to go after, and we put them into a big hopper and let the data kind of like munge for a while and figure out which are the real accounts that we should be going after. Because I think that's really the foundation. No matter how well you execute your account-based marketing programs, if you've selected the wrong accounts in the beginning, you're already host.
So I also want to challenge some of the metrics, just to kind of warn people. If you're account-based marketing, if you're segmenting, and it's your largest accounts, the probability that your sales velocity is going to be faster than your small accounts is really low because they're big accounts. So you have to set expectations clearly. Your win rate should go up. It may not be faster. It'd be great if it is, but the proper comparison is actually similar accounts that you're doing ABM versus not. Now, if you're us, that's zero, right? We do it all in. So we have to look at what's our win rate? Is it going up? What's our customer NPS? Because it turns out if you give them a good sales experience, there's a lot of data from the Conference Executive Board that if they have a good experience in sales, they actually are much more favorable towards your product as they use it. And so these are other indicators, but we use as our canary in a coal mine because we also have the year-long cycle. So we tie to pipeline, we tie to revenue, that's great, but it's 12 months. So we use the interesting and targeted as our, if we can get the interesting and targeted up in every program we do, whether they're offline or online, if we can keep growing that number, we end up with, and for the VC in the room, a spectacular CAC ratio. And for anyone who's raising money, you want a spectacular CAC ratio.
Yeah, so I agree with that. So we actually divide up our business by enterprise and mid-market because our close rates, our funnel velocity, all of that stuff is very different for our mid-market accounts versus enterprise. One thing on Nick's comment, which I totally agree with, we took when we were selecting our DB3K, we took a predictive analytics approach to selecting those accounts because we really wanted a very thoughtful, data-driven approach to selecting our accounts. Now, once we got to our DB3K, it was actually probably the DB2500 or so. Literally almost every account rep that we had looked at the list, looked at what fell into their patch and said, oh, okay, I know this didn't score well for whatever reason, but can I add these 30 or 40 accounts? All right, there was this constant kind of, oh, no, I know that always a reason kind of, I've sold to this in the last 4 businesses that I've been in, things like that. And the spirit of sales and marketing alignment and collaboration, we said, okay, all right, we're going to do it. Without telling them, we actually segmented them and actually tracked progress against those separate accounts so that we could actually decide, just figure out from a data standpoint which accounts were actually performing better. The ones that were selected through a predictive approach or the ones that were based on sales gut. And in every single case, for every single salesperson, the predictive accounts actually performed better across all 3 of our metrics. So when we presented that, there was, oh, no, let me see that. And it was amazing. They were like, okay, I get it. No more discussion.
Trust the data.
Trust the data.
So similarly on the list side, in our case, so when I came to Tipalti about a year and a half ago, they didn't have a kind of built out marketing there. And so initially from kind of once a strategy was done, it was pretty clear that target account marketing had to be at least a key part of the piece. Someone talked earlier about having to teach the executives and sales sometimes what target account means to an extent. In our case, marketing actually developed the target account database of the 3,000 companies. And because we kind of benefited from the fact that people didn't really know what this was to an extent, and so we could do whatever we wanted. And so we built the 3,000 list, we prioritized, we had data on it, we predictive analytics it, and then we rolled it out to sales, and then all they had to do is kind of prioritize a little bit, and so we'd already prioritized it for them, but then they added their favorites, and that's worked really nicely. So
How did they feel about it, though? How did the salespeople respond to that approach?
Initially, they were definitely skeptical, and they were like, what does marketing know about this? How can they didn't understand how marketing could even help in that perspective.
We're almost getting into beer 30 here, so I'm going to pass the baton out to the audience. We have had such a conversation going on right now. Literally, I made it through like a third of my questions, and not that I over-prepared, but it's just been a great conversation. Are you raising a hand? Would you like to?
So, hi. I'm really interested in the SDR, BDR role in your organization. So I work for, I mentioned this before, I work for a company called Reflective. We sell into HR. We're growing really fast. We sell mostly mid-market. I know demand-based customer. So a couple other folks here. So really excited there. But we're learning and growing, and I run marketing, and then we have a very successful BDR team, but they're kind of, out in their own world. They're run by sales in our organization. And I'm trying to get us to work much more closely together, especially on the account-based marketing side. So I think ZenIQ can eventually help us get there. But curious, are the SDRs under marketing in your organizations? Are they under sales? How do you actually work together versus, because right now we have separate targets, which I think doesn't make any sense.
Well, so you're right. At Bloomreach, the SDRs are part of marketing, but they are aligned very distinctly to sales reps. So for reporting purposes, for program, for professional development, for measurement, they're in marketing. But their day-to-day life is working with their AEs through a shared, known account list. There's none. The idea of having 2 sets of targets is just wasting money. Just burn it.
Yeah, at Demand Base, the SDRs actually report through sales. I've had SDRs report in through me in marketing. I've had them report into sales. Quite honestly, it doesn't matter to me as long as the teams are aligned and actually sharing goals. It honestly doesn't matter to me whether they report in through me or they report in through sales. One thing I would anyone that's jumping into account-based marketing and has an SDR team, one thing to keep in mind as you actually start comping your SDR team, one thing that a lot of companies don't realize is as you go into an account-based approach, your SDR numbers are going to change, sometimes significantly, because now they're focused on a specific set of accounts, so they're no longer kind of doing that, casting the wide net, anything that comes out the door that, they get a bant off of, it, works their way into an MQL. And that change in compensation has to be managed really carefully, otherwise you have a very upset group of 25-year-old males that are, basically.
Females.
Do you? Good for you. All right. We have the bro row at Demand Base. So anyway.
So I've got a question. It sounds like many of you are on an ABM journey. And so, there's sort of two parts of that question. One, what's the most important place to start? And the second is, how do you end up with an integrated solution rather than 12 different point solutions?
I think it starts with the right accounts. I mean, you have to make sure that you're targeting the right accounts and then making sure that you're gathering all the different, depending on how large your marketing and sales army is, making sure that you're getting the right people in the room from the get-go. And you guys are aligning on the overall vision and strategy of the approach. Because you can go at it a lot of different ways. I mean, we had a lot of heated conversations, like should it be a net new kind of prospecting play or should it be the install base where we're making the majority of our big bets, so.
And I would take just a half a step closer on that and say it starts with sales and marketing alignment. You've got to have first philosophical alignment and then operational alignment with your sales team, because as you jump in and do that first step of a target account selection, you've got to have that alignment, again, philosophical and operational, in order to actually successfully and collaboratively get to a point where you guys agree on your set of target accounts. Because if you end up with a target account list that marketing buys into but sales doesn't, it's not going to work, and vice versa.
So let me address your stack question, the second one, which is how do you get to an integrated stack? So the first thing is there are certain what we'll call systems of record. Our foundation is Salesforce and then Marketo. So you got to kind of get that right. Make sure it's set up in a way that is, you know where accounts are, you've got the basics. And I would even back up a step. In order to do that, we have a full-time marketing technologist, and actually he has marketing technologists under him, and I only have, other than my SDRs, my marketing department's only about 14 people. So you can do the ratios. It's that important. It's not someone's half job. The first two marketing technologists I hired were both Marketo champions. It's just not a part-time job. What Jason will say is he looked back at our stack 12 months ago and he's like, wow, half of it is gone. He keeps iterating and testing. So you must integrate with Salesforce and or Marketo in our world, whatever you choose. And then, there's a lot of venture, there's a lot of startups, there's a lot of possibilities. Our strategy has been to pick horses that we think are strong, work closely with them to deliver what we need, test it out, and if they do, we go long on them. So like we're long on lead space. We just went long on Engagio. There are some other folks that I won't name that are not up here that have been, sorry it didn't work out. But I really think having a dedicated person for whom it's their job to do that makes a huge difference.
And the one thing I'll add is that decision on the tech stack and Marketo and Salesforce and ZenIQ and other people up there, the proportion you determine that target, in some cases like Bloomreach sounds like 90%, 100% of your marketing strategy is target account. In my case, 1 to 2 of the 5 kind of strategic levers I have are target account. It kind of blends into personalization. So those are my 2 kind of pieces where target account goes there. And so the decision of how I set up Salesforce and integrate with Marketo and other systems I plug in is going to be a different outcome than the decision they make because of that. Like as an example, we start our funnel in Salesforce with lead, and then it moves to an account and opportunity. I'm sure up here there's a few other people who have implemented Salesforce and the integration with Marketo very differently because of the proportion of their strategy that's target account focused.
So this is a good segue to my question. I just heard it sounded like roughly 30% of your focus is on account-based marketing versus 90%?
So I would say personalization is a big piece of how we do account-based marketing, but you could argue we're 100%.
100%. I'm just launching kind of a new program around ABM, and I look at a narrowed focus and I get excited, but I'm also trying to think about hunting with spears versus nets and how do I balance that ratio. Any other numbers in terms of split across the board here? Like Natalie, you mentioned like kind of 30 to 50 accounts. I'm trying to figure out how do I optimize my time across what can be really high calorie activities versus casting a wide net.
So I think it really depends on what your total addressable market is. So for us, let's say at the enterprise level, we might have 7,000 accounts we care about, 7,000 companies who could buy from us. Below that, we might have a general business category that might have 15,000. And so, as I mentioned in my very first remark, we really use account-based marketing primarily at those tiers where those are the accounts we care about. They're the most lucrative, highest ASP. We've got account reps who are moving in. At the lower levels, we have mid-market 1 and mid-market 2, which are really, some people might call them SMB, some people might call them emerging growth companies. And at those tiers, we have to maintain this net fishing thing. You know, we throw some email blasts out there. We do some long tail SEO stuff with Captora. We have a lot of pay-per-click campaigns that are really designed around just pulling as many fishies into the boat as we can, weeding through the ones we want to keep and throwing the rest back. But for our largest accounts, we have adopted the ABM strategy. So it's really a two-pronged approach.
I wanted to add one thing. When I do workshops, I talk to people about creating a matrix where stages of engagement as columns and rows would be issues or solutions you're trying to, maybe it's products, things like that. Take the accounts that you think you're most interested in, pour them into that matrix. Inevitably, you'll find there's like 2 or 3 cells where you look at it and say, wow, I've got a lot of people here. Become expert at that. So find something that is big enough and valuable enough for you to become expert at, and don't try to become expert at ABM. Become expert at a cell or 2, and really just nail that thing down. Understand exactly what they're looking for, how they buy, those types of things, and make it very finite. And then the problem becomes much more digestible.
I'll throw one other kind of opinion out there. I think what's interesting about ABM today is its ability to scale. So Natalie and I were talking earlier, and I think you're focused really on kind of the top 30 accounts which by definition means you are taking a very customized, almost bespoke approach to your marketing plans, right? Which is great. That also probably means that those accounts are worth a huge amount of money, right? What I think is interesting about what's happened with ABM over the past 2 or 3 years is the ability to truly scale your ABM efforts. So you don't have to focus on those 30 accounts anymore. That's actually top of the pyramid, and for companies that have those very high dollar values, that's a great place to actually focus some effort. But for a lot of companies like Host Analytics and other companies that have a longer tail, now you can actually go after 3,000 or 4,000 or 7,000 accounts, and it's not a bespoke type of thing. It's a template-based, segment-based, account-based approach, but it truly allows you to expand beyond just that core set of what used to be a handful of accounts that you could focus on.
I'll add to that. We organize our target account list and other techniques that exact same way. So it's a pyramid. Strategic accounts at the most will get the events and the highest touch type programs, and we go kind of down that funnel. Kind of on your question around how do you prioritize, to me, one of the first things I did when I started is try to connect the lead or the engagement all the way to the sale, and then it's measuring ROI. And you throw shit on the wall kind of thing, and you see which stuff has the highest ROI. And so if your inbound program or your traditional marketing automation programs have highest ROI, and that beats target account, it beats target account. When you start kind of finding that your lead gen, your kind of net lead gen, depending on your mix, of course, but your net lead gen programs aren't getting the ROI, like literally opportunity and sale and then ROI from that. Target account is the next thing to go to in my mind, because the other piece is you're throwing a lot of stuff on the wall, it's not converting. At least with target account, you know that you're putting your impressions and your engagement in front of the right people, so the right companies and then the right people. So that's what I think.
So I actually just have a comment, not a question, so I'm cheating here. But I think about this a little differently. So, and I'm still learning. I have my own view just from being frustrated with databases and trying to understand what's going on with accounts. But I think you guys are talking about you have a list of a target that you know you want to go after, maybe use a system to predictive analytics to figure it out. And because we're a new company and we have mid-market accounts, there's so many out there. And so the way I see account-based marketing, there's the pick your accounts, whether that be predictive and you have a list of 1,000, 5,000, 30, whatever it is. But then there's also that view, I think you're talking about the lens of the whole holistic world of all the potential companies you could ever possibly sell to. And how do you identify the ones that are engaged? And by engage, not just one person, but to me, it's more interesting if 5 people at a company open an email than if one person clicks on 5 emails, especially if they're all in HR. So there's that view, which I've thought through this a lot in terms of there's different models of companies and it doesn't work for everyone, but if you're a company that's, trying to figure out how to do that account-based marketing, then you can say, okay, this quarter, these are the engaged accounts, so next quarter, I'm going to do targeted campaigns to them, but using it more from that model instead of the top-down model.
So we actually, back in 2003, when I first started working with Eloqua, we created at Reactivity something called the Radar Report. And the entire purpose of the Radar Report was to show you, you're going to laugh from ZenIQ, was to show you which accounts were increasing in engagement, number of people, number of things, and which ones were falling off. And we didn't use it to trigger a marketing campaign, because at the time that wouldn't have been possible. We actually used it to set the sales force on fire and say, you've got the whole universe. It's easier to sell to somebody who's actually looking for what you want. And so if we've put out the right bait, the right content, and they start engaging with it, it's a sign that they've reached some level of inquiry about the problem. That's a wonderful time to start getting involved with them, as opposed to chasing the guy you sold to whose kid's on the soccer team or whatever else. These people have the problem, or they are thinking about the problem. And the wonderful thing about the Radar Report, and now what you can see through account-based marketing from from a number of the various tools, is every week you could, at the end of the week, say, these are the ones I want to start with today, Monday, Tuesday, because they are interested in the problem. And I think that's how you would deal with, if the world is your oyster, this is how you find pearls.
I was going to make one comment. If you want to really be a friend with your CFO and your CEO, add a mix of cross-sell and upsell to your program. For larger accounts that have more complex product lines, boy, do a white space analysis. I've done this several times before. The ability to sell like one additional, let's say 30 basis points on average of an additional product into your installed base today, your operating income just flies through the roof, and your CTO or CFO is going to be at your door just, being your best friend. So think of cross-sell and upsell if you have a product line that's conducive to that. It's magical.
The one thing that goes to your point is to make all the stuff work, it's the list, but it's also the database and the cleanliness of the database and the normalizing of the leads with opportunities with the accounts and the such. And so if you can't get that right, you do need to get the list right, but you also need to get this whole kind of normalization piece and the matching and the team stuff that Joel has been talking about.
I don't know about you, but our database is perfect. I mean, there's no no data errors or anything. Thank God we got that fixed.
I'm going to probably have to say thank you to everybody tonight, because we're down at the bottom of the hour at 6:30, and we still have wine and beer and some food to have here and a lot of good networking. So I wanted to say thank you, applause to everybody on the panel here, and thank you to everybody for coming here tonight.